Hey everybody, welcome to You're Not the Audience. Sorry about the few-minute hang-up. It wouldn't be another week of You're Not the Audience if it didn't start with a little bit of camera troubles. So, yeah, this is You're Not the Audience. This is a weekly live show where I break down brands, products, and subcultures that stand out by not appealing to everyone. I'm Calvin, creative director at Parliament. And we are a brand transformation agency from Portland, Oregon. We help brands when they're facing big changes, and we help them do that and become the next version of themselves with strategy, positioning, identity, messaging, all that good stuff. Episode will be just like any other. We're gonna just start with a couple little obsessions, recent obsessions. And then we're going to talk about how best practices kill innovation. Very clickbaity title today. And then we'll just kind of keep rolling from there. But how's everybody doing today? I think it's been real nice here in Portland lately. It's been good weather. It's kind of dreamy. It's this time of year where it's like hard to want to stay in the house. So next week we have our big golf tournament coming up. So we're gonna be out getting sunburnt all day, like next Friday. So I'm excited about that. Okay, before let's talk about a couple recent obsessions. I think the big obsession for me today is last night I went and saw the classic Baz Luhrmann, Leonardo DiCaprio, Romeo and Juliet movie, and it still stands up. It's incredible. It's funny, I hadn't seen that movie in, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, and the Hollywood Theater here in Portland, which is a classic old theater that plays great stuff, they played it last night, and it was wild to see it. You know, I was like, I've been an art kid forever, so there's like Romeo and Juliet has come up in the discussion about like postmodern media and what it meant to like mix its different senses of culture in it, where there's like Euro stuff, like Euro trash meets punk meets like Mexican culture, all of these different things. And it's crazy to see it now 20 years later, where like it really was kind of like peak postmodern aesthetic for that time. So it was really interesting to see. It's still great. The editing's awesome. It's goofy as hell. Somehow John Leguizamo is great in it. So it was a very good one. Oh, let me check chat here. My chat's hidden. Now we got it fixed. Oh yeah, fuel in the tank. I think it's Ryan. Here, sweet. The other, so yeah, go watch Romeo and Juliet. It's beautiful, great, love it. The other thing that's been kind of just a recent little thing we've been thinking about a lot at the office lately, which I'll pull this up and show you. We just put up a article called on our website called Why Rebranding Can't Be Rushed and What You Can Control When the Urgency is Real. Very think PC title. But this just got posted by Aaron on our crew, and it's this really great article that is going to be really relevant to talking about information or innovation and everything today. I think this article is great. It talks about the problem of like when brands need to do a big rebrand. They've often already been trying for a long time, so that when they finally pull in outside experts, it's this rushed thing. But there's usually part of the reason it's taken so long and they can't do it themselves is because there's actually a really large lack of organizational clarity. We run into this with pretty much every client when they're doing a rebrand. You kind of have to go back to basics. And so it's just a great article. There's a link down below with it. Go give it a read. I really love this one. So I think turned out good. Oh, we're going to talk about this later. Some dark throne, but So let's get into it today. So we're going to be talking about best practices and how they and optimization and can kill innovation and new ideas. But let's start with some story time. This has been on my mind a lot because recently we've been working with and this kind of happens with almost every client at some point. We usually start doing brand strategy with a client. We're diving deep into the background of the company. And the client says, they want a dramatic change. And they keep saying this over and over and over again. They don't want to look like anyone else. They don't want to look like any competitors. And they really want it to be like shocking and stand out and be truly distinct as soon as this whole new rebrand launches. But there's always a point that we hit every single time where you kind of get through strategy and you start entering the point of like visual identity, or sometimes it's like a campaign. You're just having to start actually like executing on the campaign, and clients will then kind of take a little step back. You can see the fear of like the risk kind of creep up. They say, can you show us examples of work that looks like our company, or looks like us, or looks like how other people in our industry look? And it's this really it's always happens in just a split second where like that vision and the conviction of like, we need to look different, we need to do the thing, it butts up against reality, and the fear and like the possibility of like the fear of making a mistake starts hitting them. And I think that's a really, really important moment, because that's usually where then like you can either like internally for them and for us, it's a reminder to like push harder, to remember why why we're all there, why they're paying us, essentially, is to like get them to that point of distinction from others. So, and this kind of all is like on my mind a lot because it feels like a provocative statement, but it's been a really long-held belief at Parliament that best practices never create innovative and new ideas. That's maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but it's just been something that we've really stood by, and I think it kind of takes a lot of courage to remind ourselves that innovation only happens when you defy best practices. So we've always had the motto of be brave, stand apart. And that's always kind of put this idea at the forefront for us. So encourage anyone out there to always say, be brave, stand apart. That's our like challenge to everyone, to always just be like, it's okay. Like, it's scary. The future is unknown. So, oh yeah, Ryan, the realization of marketing saying, oh, how do I sell this to my boss? Yes. We're going to talk about that, because how you sell it to your boss, that usually is a question around measurable data, which we'll just chat about measurable data and how it's kind of the enemy of innovation in a little bit. Yeah, that's always the big one. So, okay, we're talking best practices and innovation. And I think one thing to like start out with is that like corporate thinking, like larger corporations, companies, both need and tend to focus on optimization. Big elaborate companies, even small companies, like you want to focus on optimization, and you want to kind of like min-max your everything, all your effort you're putting in for assessing risk, all these things. But within every company, there is always these two opposing forces of optimization versus innovation, and both are necessary. But the problem is that most brands and companies end up letting optimization win, and best practices kind of become the only thing that matter. And that's because, to get back to the how do I sell it to my boss thing, is that you can measure optimization generally. It's something that already exists, and you can put numbers to it. You can assess whether it was successful, whether it might continue to be successful, things like that. So that's where then the tension between these two things comes in, the tension between optimization and innovation. The two are just accomplishing completely different things. Innovation and optimization have two completely separate goals within a business. One minimizes risk, and the other creates possibility. So optimization wants to do things cheaper, faster, more profitable, more dependable, more reliable. That's the goal of optimization. And it'll also help you sell things to your boss. Innovation challenges if something should even exist at all, or and then if it challenges if something should exist, it then creates new systems. So that is like the job of innovation, is to like invent new systems and question whether something should continue to exist. But we should probably, I guess maybe we should like establish when I talk about best practices, what I mean. So when I'm talking about best practices, we all know what they are. It's like the standards that are just like, this is the way you're supposed to do it. This is the right way. This is the guaranteed way to get to success. But I think we also forget, for best practices are just yesterday's innovations. And they were so good, everyone started copying them. Like, you especially saw this in like, I mean, it's still happening, but I remember like in the early days of the web, there was always like a new fast-paced innovations nonstop, but then they would really quickly get adopted, and you would see it in this like, you'd basically see it in the span of a week, where all of a sudden like somebody would create something new and it would start getting pushed out through everything, and it was really cool. But so that's kind of like the reminders that best practices were once crazy ideas. It's just, it became so popular, people started copying them, then it became the best practice. And so since everyone starts using it, best practices can't inherently produce originality anymore, because like everyone is capable of producing that same thing now. But it is worth remembering that, yeah, every best practice was once risky, it was weird, it felt wrong, and until enough people copied it. Like, that's it. All it takes is one of those things breaking through, and then enough people start copying it. So the other like part of this tension that exists between optimization and innovation, I really hate saying innovation this often since it's been such a buzzword for so long, but it does have a real meaning. I'm gonna say innovation a lot today, sorry. So if I start saying like synergy or things like that, just put me out of my misery immediately. So the tension here is that companies want innovation. They know they need to do something new to stay relevant, but they usually build organizations that punish it. At some point, some level, your org gets so big, you start having elaborate org charts, and anything that starts falling outside of that gets scary, gets unreliable, it becomes unknown. And so that's kind of where one of those tensions exists. But I mean, I think the other important thing to know is that like, it's not like those departments. So when I'm thinking of like the parts of organizations that exist and kind of quell or punish innovation, you've got your like sales departments, your growth departments, your procurements, like all of those kinds of different parts of an org. But like, that doesn't kill creativity. It's like, those things are just doing their job. The difference is just that like all that stuff relies on measurable data. Here's back to how do you sell it to your boss? Those ones are easy because there's all measurable data. You can usually, on most of those, is this line goes down, that money line goes up, or something of that sort. So this side of the business, it helps them, like the optimization side, it helps them reduce risk and costs, and it just helps them project into the future, which that's a big one. Because usually you're assessing past, you can establish where it might keep going. And it's super good that those departments exist, all those optimization departments. We need them, and we literally can't do our jobs without them. I mean, they're the ones that actually pay our salaries, so thanks. Thanks, optimization departments. But that problem with measurable data is that it can only measure the past. So it can only measure the old best practices. And there's inherently no way to measure if an innovative idea is going to be successful. It is inherently a risky process. And so, but that is the challenge, is that measurement is always behind innovation. There's truly no way to get ahead of it. So that's why you don't ask the efficiency departments to create originality or to create new ideas or create new products. It's because that's not in their wheelhouse. So the value of innovation just can't be measured when it's happening. It can only be measured later. I think that's a thing that honestly, like a lot of, that's kind of coming back, like going back to story time at the beginning. That's kind of why I think about that with clients, is because it's like, the biggest thing you can do at that point is just like reiterate, you have to trust us. It's risky. Like, it's a big change. It's risky. Like, we've done our work. We all have the confidence that like this is all built on a platform that we understand and we all believe in. So now we have to make the leap, and making that leap is pretty scary. I mean, like, and we all know brands that have like made that their thing. Like, they're really good at doing something weird or risky. You've got like, you got Apple, for example, great at innovation, great at the optimization side. But, you know, like they did weird or risky stuff. Like they created completely new product categories, the iPhone, iPod. And then they also, like, the other innovation that they did that a lot of people don't, I think, talk about is a completely new style of retail experience. Like, they have become the gold standard now for how a retail experience should look. Then you have companies like Microsoft. When Microsoft did their Microsoft stores, which Parliament was kind of the agency of record for, the rollout of their stores. Once upon a time, back in the old days, the problem was that Apple had done it. So like anything that comes after it, it was still Apple owned that idea, you know. And then we know like other folks, like I've got this up right now, so I'll just show it, because I mean, we all know Liquid Death. Liquid Death had a stupid idea that was genius to make water cool and gnarly and violent and heavy metal, rather than just making about being pure and clean and like where every other brand was before. Some other brands that I think have like done important things and like changed the way we think a lot is like a brand like Supreme. I'm not into Supreme. I'm not into that world of like fashion, but the way that they have completely changed how fashion is marketed and distributed with drops and things like that. I think Supreme was a really big one. And then, I mean, we all know like Patagonia is like another great example of like taking big risks. I mean, like their job is saving the world, you know? So when you pitch the idea of like, we're a clothing company, but our goal is to save the world, that's kind of a big risk. So, but let's talk about I guess actually we'll come back to this. I want to come back to like some things that inspire me more than brands do, that I think bringing back some other episodes. But I think the other part about this too, you know, I was just talking about like measurement and optimization is all about kind of reducing risk. I think this is maybe the most important part of this whole discussion, really, is that there's an invisible risk you can't measure. If you are focusing on numbers, you're focusing on those best practices, on gaining measurable data, and you're not pushing yourself to have like conviction and vision about where you can go in the future, there's a big invisible risk. And that's because like organizations end up obsessing over all this measurable data, the measurable risk of trying something new. But nobody measures or really can measure the cumulative risk of becoming forgettable or indistinct. Like that's something you can't measure. And usually the way you kind of keep you avoid being forgettable is you kind of have to kind of keep pushing yourself forward in whatever way works for your brand. So that's the risk that eventually destroys a brand over time, is that org starts obsessing over optimization. Nobody can really measure the risk of doing nothing new. And so eventually over time the brand starts falling apart. And that's how you get like kind of behaviors of like, you know, there's like the old saying of like nobody was ever fired for hiring IBM and things like that. But then over time, those companies even, they just became reliable. It was the safe choice to choose them. So that company keeps doing the same thing over and over again. And at some point you're like, oh, don't think about IBM a lot these days now, do we? Okay, let's talk about some fun things, because I think I always like to bring back some things from past episodes. And before we dive into just more innovation talk, let's talk about some things that aren't brands that I think did innovation really well, and like big worlds that they have affected. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. So I think in maybe my first episode of this, we talked about good old black metal music from Scandinavia. So this is, I mean, okay, so this is when, if there's anyone who ever watches this who is a diehard black metal person, they'll be like, well, this band that you see here, you can't read their logo, Dark Throne, is technically a part of the second wave of the black metal movement. But this is, I feel like, when it really peaked and started hitting the aesthetic that we now think of. So, okay, these are just, I want to run through some things that I think are innovations that I get inspired about. And so this one is thinking about how Scandinavian black metal was an absolute rejection of everything. And there isn't any reason we can't apply this to like how we think about brands. You know, so black metal was constant screaming, no singing, unreadable logos, like the branding, like you had to be in the know to understand like their name even. It had terrible, shitty, lo-fi production. They were mostly all recorded in bathrooms, and that was like actually became a part of the aesthetic because they did it so well. And the whole idea of like doing it wrong became the strength of this whole genre, which is now why we understand this as an aesthetic. Like, even if you're not a metal person, you understand this aesthetic of these guys. And like, this was from the mid-90s, is the cover for Transylvanian Hunger, a classic album by Dark Throne. And it looks, honestly, it looks like shit. It's terrible. But it was like so committed to the vision, and they inspired so many other people that it created that whole movement. I mean, like, look at these. Just a bunch of dummies. This is all mayhem. They were a very problematic band. I mean, this is also to say, they didn't do everything right. A lot of problems in the black metal, Scandinavian black metal world. But we'll save that for another chat someday. And then there's some things like, oh, I didn't pull up images for this, but I will. Another thing, we've talked about games a lot, and we all know D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing game. It kind of defined, it now is just, it is the standard of what role-playing games look like. If you're a nerd into games like that, the books you buy are these big, thick textbooks, and I mean, I don't know. Let's just pull up some images, because not everyone, I mean, they're like these big, thick books. They have this cool old school fantasy stuff. But I think one thing that I want to show you is how the interiors of these look. They're like, they got cool illustrations and stuff like that, but they still read like textbooks. It's all about rules and things like that. And so there became a big shift when a new role-playing game came out called Morkborg. And I think it was a really interesting example of like looking at how everyone has done it. Like, these games have been around for a long time, you know, 30, 40, 50 years. And somebody looked at it and was like, why hasn't anybody tried this? So Morkborg was created by, oh my god, I'm gonna blank on his name, a designer named, the aesthetic of it was created by a guy named Johan Nor, another Scandinavian fella. But he had this idea of taking the rules for this game and turning it into basically like defining this whole aesthetic where it just looks like a punk or metal zine. It's like messy, it's janky, it communicates the world in this kind of like gnarly, gross, heavy metal, like insane way. And like, it almost, some of the pages like this become almost unreadable. It feels like it's like the resurgence of David Carson's school of grunge design. But like no one had created books that looked like this. And it's exploded in popularity, and it kind of threw out that old boring textbook style and leaned into this heavy art, heavy metal punk aesthetic. And I think it was really, really great at doing that. And it, like, the proof is in the pudding kind of thing. Like, since this game has come out, it like inspired this whole new wave of thinking about games and designing them and who gets to design them. There's a lot more like role-playing games designers who feel like they can make games now because they work in this kind of like punk zine style. So it is very popular. It's cool. So I think another one too that's worth thinking about. Actually, let's talk about one other one. We're going to keep talking games. I'm in the mood today. So there's a actually, let me pull this up. There's a large world of board games. I'm going to keep talking about games called they're usually called historical war games, and it tends to be games that look like this, which are just there for, you know, being nice. They're for old guys that still love to think about World War II and every other war, and about simulationist games where you're recreating battles. So this is an established genre. It's small, but it's like definitely an established genre of games. And then came along, there's this great board game called Root. It came out, and their huge innovation, which is all art related. And that's kind of why I love this one, is like, it is actually in structure very similar. Well, you can see some images here. It is very similar in structure and playstyle to those old school like war games that are only for like crazy military heads. But their innovation was they pulled in an illustrator named Kyle Farron, and he created this whole world of like, as it says, a game of woodland might and right, and created this whole aesthetic that is like anthropomorphized animals, and it's about them fighting over territory in a forest. And this game is massive now. It's blown up like crazy. And so just by them doing that art shift, it changes the way everyone thinks about it. And no one was doing anything like this. And all those old heads who are like, these aren't war games, they've got cute animals in it, of course they get all upset. Yeah, Ryan, boomer. Yeah, major boomer time. And like they just got really upset. They were like, this isn't a war game. And you're like, the only thing that changed is the setting. I mean, it is also an incredible game. But I think that's kind of like worth noting, is that like, if you went and asked every single one of those war game guys, like, what's the best way to make a new war game, you wouldn't have gotten this from a single one of them. Like, this was all in someone's head who like dared to take a risk, and that is good. Like, I love it so much. And so I think another one, I mean, since we're talking art, it's worth also just thinking about, you know, I like to bring art into brand work as much, like specifically contemporary art. Whenever I'm pulling mood boards, I often include a lot of like actual art in it. Actual art. There's a loaded that's a loaded phrase when we're talking about design. No, not design. We're talking about actual art. So, but I think that's like another thing to remember too, is that like when you're thinking about another thing that inspires me, that's a big innovative thing, is art history throughout all of time. Art history is basically the history of rejecting best practices over and over and over again. When you have like Impressionism from like Van Gogh, someone's going to correct me and say, no, it's Van Gogh. But you know what I mean? Like when you look at that, or when you look at Cubism, like a complete like falling apart of shapes in art. And then the response to that was something like minimalism, where it was about stripping away all excess possible things. They were always in response to what had quickly become like the best practices before that. And so all of these things were doing were making decisions about their brands, basically, or art movements, where they rejected everything and they were deemed wrong at first until they just kind of proved it. So, is there anything else, any brands or any other things in the world that people can think of where they're like, you know what, they did this one thing and it was like pretty crazy. Like that was like nobody thought they could pull it off and it did. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of I don't know, I mean, like there's even things when you talk about like brands like Dyson or something like that, where it was just like, it was a completely, like, the idea for them as a company was just like, we're gonna make these absolutely batshit crazy engineering inventions that and like double down on them, and that's like all we do. We focus on that, and like they create a whole brand out of that, and I love it. But okay, so I guess this sets up the idea that like optimization and innovation are at odds with each other. It's really difficult to have both those things coexisting in your organization. I mean, we run into this even as like a design firm, where it's like, how do you invest in your current client work? How do you invest in possible new future projects for you? How do you invest in your own portfolio? That's the but that's a whole other story. But how do you keep pushing our thinking as an agency forward when we also just have to deal with like the daily optimization and like daily aspects of the job? So that then kind of just asks, like, how do you start setting up an organization or a brand for innovation? And this is internally. And internally, or I should say, there's generally a couple ways you can set up a company for innovation and get them on the right track. You create an internal division, whether that's truly a different org or some other rules that guide innovation in your company, or you hire outside perspectives. That's where a company like Parliament comes in. But so the first one is like how you create internal division and like why you do it. So a lot of big companies at some point, when they get to a scale, they know they need to keep that like innovation aspect of their business going. So they end up creating innovation labs or startup incubators. And I think this is a thing that like a lot of companies should try, even on a smaller scale if possible. Because, I mean, the reason you create a completely separate innovation lab or a startup incubator within a company is like it peels it off into a separate little org, because that innovation side can't really survive under the metrics of optimization. And you see companies do this all the time, where you've got like, like Google X was Google, or is Google's like R&D innovation department. You've got Nike innovation. Nike has like a whole separate part of the company that is just focused on innovation. You've got like crazy ones like Skunkworks from what's they're called, Lockheed Martin. Not necessarily a great company, but they created Skunkworks. They did insane things there. But Nike is a really good example for this in general, because they have this whole part of their organization that is all about innovation. Like, it's literally called Nike Innovation, and it's protected within the org from all of the other stuff going on, and it's then just responsible for creating new ideas and bringing them to the market over like a multi-year process. I've been lucky enough to be in the Nike Innovation room, where they have, I hope they still have this room there. It's incredible. It's a giant room where every single project they have they're working on is just printed out on a sheet of paper with a quick little summary of it, so they can track all of them visually in one space. I'd be impressed if they still have this, but it is one of the coolest rooms to ever go into, because it's just all right there in person. And you can see like what part of the process it's in, how many more years it will take until that innovation is even ready. And that might be like new fabrics, new types of shoes, completely different crazy inventions. So it's like every little piece that counts as like an innovation there. But they've also done another thing. Like Nike's interesting because Nike's also started these incubator projects. Like one is called Valiant Labs. I don't know how much Valiant Labs is still around. I hope it is. They've done cool things. But Valiant Labs is this part of Nike where they actually run just a ton of tiny little startups inside the company, funded by the larger org, but they are essentially ran as completely separate companies. One of that is to mitigate risk coming back on the larger org, and the other one is so they can just be free to create insane ideas. Like some folks that used to work at Parliament worked at Valiant Labs, and they made a product where it was basically like a subscription service for your shoe service for kids. And the idea was that kids grow out of shoes so quickly, they'd send you a pair of shoes, you'd send it back as soon as your kid grew out of those, and then they would send you another pair. Awesome idea. I think they end up maybe closing that down, but then what they do is they take all the learnings from that and like work it into other parts of the business and be like, okay, can we like learn something from this? And so great way to kind of like actually set up your company for doing that, for having like some kind of innovative aspect in it. The other aspect of this, you can either create internal division or you can create outside perspectives. And that's where a company like us comes in, where like Parliament comes in. And I assume anyone who's watching this, because that's not all orgs can kind of create that really clear separation within. They might not have the funds, they might not have the vision or conviction to do so. It takes like a specific belief system to create those kinds of divisions. So not everyone can do that, but that's why they come to like people like us for brand work, or that's why you hire IDEO to do your product design and systems thinking and things like that, because you just can't do it. So I think that is a good way to do it. It still doesn't necessarily imbue it like your whole company with that, but that's how you can kind of do like, a lot of innovation. When we were talking about like creating that internal division, you're a brand like Nike, you're getting like a good incremental rise up through that time. But when you do the kind of like hiring an outside expert or something, you get these kind of like big leaps that end up happening. And the challenge with that is because it becomes a really big leadership, and like I mentioned organizational clarity earlier, it becomes a big leadership and organizational clarity challenge at that point, because you hire these outside experts to come in and bring new ideas to you, and your business is not set up in a way to fully accept those types of new ideas. And that's when you get the kind of situations where a client then, they keep saying, yeah, we want to be totally different, we want to do this, but then once the rubber hits the road, they're kind of like, how do we take a step back? How do we like minimize risk? You kind of see that always. And so that's really then one of the biggest things, is that all of this focusing on innovation in a company, whether it's through hiring others or creating your own internal division, this just all requires leadership that has conviction and vision for the company. And just, it has to go beyond org charts and optimization. And I think that's the challenge to like branding folks, is that like our job then is to step in often and bring that conviction and vision with us, to like bring that confidence that they might be lacking. Try and say, one issue in big orgs is that a company will hire really talented people, but they spend all their time in meetings not creating. Yes, that is also an optimization problem. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've definitely probably all been in jobs where you spend like a huge part of your day in meetings talking about the work that you're supposed to be doing. And yeah, it's rough. I mean, there's just, I've definitely been there. And it is absolutely an optimization problem, because like for, I think a lot of people, it's scary if you're just like, you just need to go work on and make things for weeks on end. That's immeasurable, like the effect you're getting out of it, until you get that one breakthrough on a thing. But if you're in a bunch of meetings every day and you're getting your face seen around regularly, and like there's this kind of like hidden little optimization like puzzle that's happening there where it's like, okay, I'm seeing this person's face a lot. They must be doing lots of work. It's definitely got that aspect to it. But you're too bogged down in meetings to really make any big change. So that's a tough place to be. I think, okay, I guess one other thing to talk about with this too, that I think is pretty important to start thinking about right now is that, okay, so we have these two worlds within any corporation or any organization. We have these two worlds. There's optimization, there's innovation. One is maintaining the standard of business. Like, its goal is to keep pushing the business forward, and no matter what, make sure money is coming in. That's the optimization side, essentially. And the innovation side, hopefully the goal is like, let's keep doing this forever. Like, we need to invent new things, new ways of doing things, new ways of approaching things, new products, all these different things, new ways of looking at the world, in hopes that we can continue to affect that world and we don't optimize ourselves into non-existence. But the one thing that kind of, I think, gets talked about a lot right now is how people are using AI for ideas and using that for brainstorming and things like that. So this is, I mean, that's cool. AI tools, sweet. Use them if they help you. But I mean, we just kind of have to remind ourselves, like a lot of folks are using AI for generating ideas, for brainstorming, but it is worth remembering that like AI as a whole is an optimization technology. That is what it is. Its whole job is to predict the likely next thing, like statistically. Like, that is its actual job. And so it's incredible how it works, but if you're always predicting what is statistically likely, you're only basing it off of like prior data, prior best practices, all of that stuff. So you're not ever really getting a truly like new innovative idea. It's just an extrapolation of what you've fed it. And that's always the big red flag for me when I hear people talking about, excuse me, a lot of people talking about using AI in brainstorming. And I feel like there's actually almost become I have a lot of really, excuse me, inhale water. I have a lot of like really complicated thoughts about AI and using it in creativity. But I think one thing that always makes me nervous is you've started seeing this almost like an acceptance where when people are talking about AI, they're like, no, as long as it's not like for the final stuff in the end, I'm okay with it. Like if you're using it for concepting, you're using it for brainstorming, you're using it for that. That just like always puts me back on my heels a little bit, because I'm like, that's the moment where the magic happens, especially in brand and design work, where you reach into the ether as a human and pull out something completely unexpected. I'll say that's a lot harder. It's much more difficult to do that. Nearly impossible, but somehow we find ways to do it. But I think that's when I always get really nervous when I hear about people using AI for generating concepts and brainstorming, is because you're taking away that like chance of finding true magic. You might find something insightful. You might find something that you can sell to your boss. You might find something that proves a point or a perspective, but it's really hard to get a truly like unimagined idea. So Ryan says here, it's good for mood boards, example imagery, but not for the act of inspiration itself. I've never felt inspired by a creative solution that GPT has spit out. Yeah, I think that's totally how people are often thinking about this. And like, I totally get it. Like mood boarding stuff, it's probably good for pulling things. I've seen people like do it for like design stuff. Like, oh, it's good for like throwing designs into mock-ups and things like that. And I think, but I think that's kind of where I come back to, is like the same thing that you noted there, is like I never end up being inspired by anything it spits back at me, because it's kind of like anything it would spit back to me is like just adjacent to what I'm thinking about. Like it's never a fully lateral move. And yeah, Jared's here. AI is only fed by what has been done. Yep, that's the challenge. Like, and I mean, like, we're all us humans, we're our own little like filtration machines, and that's the only way we ever get to new ideas, is by understanding something about the old. But yeah, for some reason, like, machines I should say yet, aren't great at that super lateral thinking where you like jump completely outside of the knowledge base and like run with a different idea. So maybe we'll be there someday. I don't know. But in the meantime, I'll keep it old school for now. But so okay. I mean, that's a lot of thoughts about random optimization and innovation. But I guess if I have any like final thoughts about it, it's just like I do like to also remind people, because I think I don't want to see this like I'm totally dragging on like that side of the business that's focused on optimization, like the sales department, all of those kinds of things. The people who like need their data, and like those are good. Every company needs optimization, but it should be also there to protect innovation, not replace it. I think that is definitely one of the biggest challenges, is that optimization often replaces a chance at innovation. Because you instead, I have this crazy idea, and someone asks, all right, let's see some numbers behind it, or let's like test it, and you're like, we won't know until it's done. Like that's always the challenge. So I think it is definitely worth remembering that every best practice that has ever existed and exists today is there because someone ignored a prior best practice. I think that's a really important thing for us to remember, is that like nothing is ever set in stone. Like even when somebody says you need to like follow up, do this, crunch these numbers, sometimes it's okay to say no. And I think the big goal is to just know when efficiency and optimization is the wrong tool. And I think we run into that a lot, especially in like our side of the biz of like brand strategy. Like brand strategy is often perceived as a research process that results in some kind of measurable or provable points or measurable or provable data. And that's actually really the opposite of what brand strategy is usually focused on. It's usually about uncovering some deep truth within you. And so it's much more ethereal. It's much more immeasurable. And when you get, that's what happens, that when these orgs that hire outside help, when they bring in an external party like Parliament or something, sometimes we can butt heads, always in a nice way, but like we butt heads because they're a company that's focused on that kind of creation of an idea as opposed to like our style. But so yeah, I think it's also just like, I think there's generally a pretty big fear for making that choice. I think it's also important to remember that, you know, the biggest threat to most companies isn't taking a big swing. Usually if you take a big swing and it misses, it's not actually that huge of a deal. I mean, sometimes if it's like you invested all of your, we're seeing this some in like the video game world now or something like that, where you've invested all of your millions into one single project. Maybe sometimes that big swing can be bad, but I think just the biggest threat to most brands isn't taking that big swing. It's the real big threat is becoming indistinguishable from all those other brands, because you're all just operating off of best practices. So yeah. Anyone in chat have any like new products or new brands or anything like that have like really inspired them lately because it felt totally different? Or new music? I don't know. I think that's the important thing about this too, is that like when you're in the branding machine, it's hard to get all those new ideas when you're stuck in the branding machine, stuck looking at other brands, other products. And, you know, I was talking earlier about how having, when clients ask, like, can you show work, like, can you show comparable work? And it's like, sure, but the process we took to get there is dramatically different because it wasn't your company. So, oh yeah, anyone in the chat have anything that's really inspired them lately that seems kind of crazy and new? Trying to think if there's anything. So yeah, if there's any other fun little innovations I've been thinking about lately. The Morkborg one is big, just because I love its approach to layout design. That one's very fun. I've been oddly, this is not innovation, but this is product design stuff. Oh, Ryan, sadly uninspired lately. And I hear that. You can get in those moments every once in a while. Oh god, I'm gonna try to find this thing. This is just oh, I gotta get better at Googling. How do I find this? I've been seeing this thing advertised, and there's been a huge... Oh, okay, here we go. This is the opposite of innovation, but it's been a big inspiration to me lately, is thinking about analog products that look like these. So this is just a trend thing. This is not probably the opposite of innovation, but I've been obsessed with this like big resurgence all of a sudden of all of these different, like, basically to me they're all products that look exactly like they were just like a reimagined like drop shipped Nintendo. And I'm like so in love with them for some reason. I think it's because I've also been obsessively playing like sci-fi video games lately, so there's some aspect of this too. But this is, for some reason I keep thinking about how like all of these products look, and then it's jumping me back to looking at like old Braun products because they all come out of this world. So that's kind of like this, like looking at a lot of this work lately has had me like think about how you can pull from some old stuff for new ideas. But oh yeah, Ryan, reminds me of the boom in cyberdecks. The DIY computing space is awesome right now. Yeah, it absolutely is. Like, and just like the explosion in like weird little emulation devices, people making their own like own bizarro pieces of hardware at home. Yeah, that area is awesome right now. Jared says, from an ad perspective, I think that Mischief is changing the activation space and getting brands to really trust them to deliver ideas that are very unconventional and yet bring huge awareness numbers. Oh yeah, I haven't followed up on them lately. Is there anything I should look at specifically? I'm like, I don't follow as much of like specifically the like activation world. So if you've got any links, drop them in the chat or something. Cause yeah, that's a world that I definitely don't follow quite as much, but I know their work is great. I'll see what the bonus points if I can remember how to spell it. Oh boy. They've got a cool guy website. Did some Fiden work? This is fun. Alright, I gotta dig into them. I haven't looked at their stuff in quite a while. HUD. Oh, this is great. Logos all riffed off of everyone else. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna dig into some Mischief stuff after this. I haven't looked at them in quite a long time. Oh yeah. Thanks for sharing that. But, alright. See, that's where the inspiration machine happens. Just right there. Ask your buds for ask your buds for new ideas. It'll take you to come up with things you didn't expect. All right, sweet. I think that's probably it for the week. It's 1 o'clock. I gotta get back to work. But yeah, so I think that's just kind of like, if I can, yeah, no AI involved. Totally. I mean, I guess if I can just sum up with everything is like, it's just like a good reminder to us who are in like the brand space that like when you feel that pressure of like coming up against you of like needing to have this like measurable aspect to prove that something's going to work, like sometimes it's good to just kind of push back a little and be like, it's going to be okay. Like you have to trust. And I think the real challenge is that like our jobs as branders is to uh is to build confidence in the people we work with. And sometimes that means we haven't built the right type of confidence or enough confidence in them. So it's like definitely that aspect is worth looking back on, like when you're doing brand work. Like, did you do the steps ahead of time to kind of get the like that confidence level up so you can take a big swing with them? But also sometimes people just need to be like, they need to be rallied up a little, you know, and be like, it's okay, we're gonna do great. I feel like that's like something about like this, our focus on optimization has made it so you can't just also like believe in a good idea and just get someone really excited about it. And I think there's a lot of people on that optimization side who are skeptical of that. But sometimes our guts are right. So, all right, well, I'm not sure if we're going to have an episode next week. If we do, it might just be like a short, quick, fun thing, because next week I'm going to be out for a day because we are doing our Caddyshack Invitational Parliament Golf Tournament, which if I am on next week, I think we'll have some like t-shirts and koozies and stuff for that. So I'll grab those and show those on stream. So maybe it'll just be a quick little fun one next week. Because I gotta make sure I actually, you know, take some time to do some real work. But this is great. Thanks everybody. Thanks for talking about innovation and how we can actually make it happen inside big corporations and the companies we work in. So everyone, cheers. Have a good rest of the day.